In the 1960s and 70s in the Arab world, when imams of mosques would not dare to delve into politics or even slightly criticize the policies of Arab leaders, there was one preacher who stood out from them all. He was blind from the eyes, but his vision was far-reaching. His name was Sheikh Abdul Hamid Kishk. Abdul Hamid Kishk challenged all of the tyrants of the Arab world at the time and was imprisoned and tortured multiple times for openly criticizing corrupt Arab governments. Sheikh Kishk openly criticized and mocked leaders such as Jamal Abdel Nasser, Anwar Sadat, Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, King Hussein of Jordan, and Hafiz al-Assad. As well as criticizing governments, Sheikh Kishk also attacked Arab celebrities and even senior Islamic scholars such as Sheikh Sha'rawi for endorsing corrupt and tyrannical regimes. Abdul Hamid Kishk was born in 1933, and after completing his Islamic studies, he delivered his first sermon at the age of 16. In this sermon, he criticized the mismanagement of his local hospital. Right from the start, he was concerned with the improvement of the society around him. Sheikh Kishk gained huge popularity in the 1960s when he began openly speaking out against the corrupt regime of Jamal Abdel Nasser and his close relationship with the Soviet Union. After coming to power, Jamal Abdel Nasser conducted a brutal crackdown of his political opponents, such as the Muslim Brotherhood. Sheikh Kishk was imprisoned and tortured as a part of this crackdown. After his release, Sheikh Kishk returned to openly lashing out at the Nasser regime. He exposed the regime by publicly stating all the names of the prisons in which he was held and even the names of the guards that tortured him. In 1966, Jamal Abdel Nasser ordered the execution of prominent writer Sayyid Qutb, who had been critical of his regime. In one of his Friday sermons, Sheikh Kishk recounted that Field Marshal Abdul Hakim Amir, who was the right-hand man of Nasser at the time, asked him in 1965 to verbally attack Sayyid Qutb in a speech in order to justify the execution, but Sheikh Kishk refused. As a result of this, Sheikh Kishk was imprisoned. Meanwhile, in neighboring Libya, similar crimes were being committed by the Gaddafi regime. Gaddafi had established his despotic regime and was executing political opponents. After the death of Jamal Abdel Nasser, Gaddafi offered to build a $500 million shrine for Abdul Nasser in Libya. Hearing about this absurd proposition, Sheikh Kishk mocked Gaddafi in one of his speeches. He stated the following:
أراد أن يشتري قبر جمال ب500 مليون دولار، قبر يباع للقذافي ب500 مليون دولار. ماذا ستصنع بالقبر؟ ماذا ستصنع بالقبر يا قذافي؟ قال.
Sheikh Kishk was also heavily critical of Saddam Hussein. Sheikh Kishk called Saddam an American agent and hypocrite who used American money and weapons to massacre Muslims in his own country. In 1986, Saddam carried out a chemical weapons genocide on the Kurdish population of Iraq. This attack killed around 100,000 Kurdish men, women and children. Sheikh Kishk also condemned Saddam's invasion of Iran and his racist views about Persians. Saddam viewed Persians as inferior to Arabs, and in the 1970s, Saddam Hussein forced out tens of thousands of people of Persian origin from Iraq, after having been accused of being spies of Israel. Sheikh Kish attacked Saddam in a speech, saying that Persians have a rich history of contributions to Islamic history and that Persia produced great Islamic scholars and polymaths such as Imam al-Ghazali and Abu Hanifa.
صدام الذي يقول إن أهل إيران قرص ومجوس. لا والله، إن أهل إيران مسلمون موحدون بالله، دخلوا الإسلام في عهد الفاروق عمر بن الخطاب، دخلوا الإسلام، ومنهم أبو حنيفة النعمان بن ثابت، ومنهم علماء المسلمين، ومن أهل إيران الإمام الغزالي رضي الله تبارك وتعالى عنه من أصفهان صاحب كتاب الإحياء، ومن لم يقرأ كتاب الإحياء فليس من الأحياء، منهم الإمام الغزالي، ومنهم عباقرة اللغة والتفسير والحديث. يا رأس النفاق والعمالة كيف ترميهم بأنهم مجوس.
Abdul Hamid Kishk also called on Sunnis and Shias to unite under one banner and was strongly opposed to sectarianism in the Muslim world. Abdul Hamid Kishk also criticized Arab leaders for using the issue of Palestine in order to gain political support. Kishk stated that Hafiz al-Assad was a coward as he fled the Golan Heights and gave away huge amounts of territory to the Israelis. Whereas when it came to fighting his own people, he was relentless and committed massacres such as the Hama massacre, in which thousands of Syrian civilians were killed. Sheikh Kishk states that no state army could ever liberate Palestine. The issue of the Palestinian freedom struggle is still used by Muslim governments today in order to benefit their political parties. During the time of Sheikh Kishk, tyrants such as Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, Hafiz al-Assad and Khomeini used war cries of Palestinian freedom in order to boost political support. However, the reality was that these leaders could not care less about Palestinian or Kashmiri blood being spilled. They all used religion as a propaganda tool. While all of these governments were raising the banner of Islamic solidarity for the Palestinians, they were all committing crimes against their own people. For example, Saddam Hussein's support for the Palestinian groups such as the PLO was a tactic to distract the masses from his war crimes in Kurdistan and Karbala. Saddam even used Palestinian fighters to fight for him in his invasions of Kuwait and Iran. Likewise, Khomeini also exploited the situation in Palestine in order to use it as a distraction from events happening within Iran. During the time when he announced a special day for Palestinian solidarity, his regime was also executing thousands of political opponents without trial and burying them in hidden mass graves across Iran. Similar hypocrisy was also committed during this period in Pakistan, when Zia-ul-Haq spent millions of dollars in support for Afghan and Kashmiri Mujahideen groups in order to distract the public from mass executions of his political opponents. Moving on, due to his fierce opposition to Arab regimes, cassette recordings of his lectures and speeches were banned from being sold in various countries such as Libya, Syria, and Iraq. Shortly after Anwar Sadat came to power in Egypt, Sheikh Kishk was arrested once again due to his criticism of the signing of the Camp David Accords between Sadat and the Israeli Prime Minister. Sheikh Kishk was eventually released in the Hosni Mubarak era. However, this time he was banned from public speaking and was placed under house arrest until his death. During these years, Abdul Hamid Kishk turned to writing since he could no longer preach in mosques. Throughout his life, Sheikh Kishk had no political affiliations and was independent in his preaching and political advocacy. He lived a simple life and he rejected the temptations to travel to the Gulf to improve his financial situation and to get rid of the siege by the Egyptian regime. Abdul Hamid Kishk was the voice that could not be silenced by any tyrant. He was arrested and tortured multiple times. He was banned from public speaking, and his cassettes were banned in various countries such as Egypt, Syria, and Iraq. However, the tyrants of the Arab world still could not silence him and could not stop the inevitable spread of his revolutionary vision.